Hello everyone. Welcome to another meme recreate tutorial. We all know AI has taken the internet by storm these past months, and people on the channel keeps asking what is the website or app that I'm using. Let me tell you right now. At the time of recording, these things cannot be done on a mobile phone, at least without the help of third-party apps or other methods that I'm not aware of. So this time I will show you how I made those wacky AI-generated videos for you to try on your own and experiment with it. Don't worry, because you don't need to be a programmer or a computer engineer to install and make this work on your computer. So for anyone there who's afraid that they'll gonna break their computer while doing this, keep your worries away, because anything we will do will give no harm on your computer whatsoever, even if you messed things up. You heard that right? But before we get started, let's get into the basics of what Stable Diffusion is. Stable Diffusion is a deep learning tool that can generate different mediums like music, images, and videos with the use of noise as reference and a model. Basically, it's a program that tries to predict its output with guidance from the user. Enough background, let's start the tutorial. For you to be able to run Stable Diffusion on your computer, you need the following hardware. At least 15 GB of free space, and a GPU with at least 6 GB of VRAM. The softwares needed are as follows: Windows 10 or 11 OS, Python version 3.10.6, Git, and a clone of Automatic 1111 Stable Diffusion Web UI GitHub repository. Links are of course in the video description. Now let's do this step by step to make things easier. First is the 15 GB of storage. If you ask me why does it need that much space, it is because of the models. And what is a model, you ask? A model is like choosing a guide for what Stable Diffusion will follow to build the images. Your computer must at least have 15 GB, because the models that you need for the Stable Diffusion to work takes a lot of space. Normally the size of a model is around 2 to 8 GB each. Thinking about having different models for different art styles would mean you'll exhaust pretty much a lot of your hard drive free space. So having a bigger free space would be nice. Your GPU should at least have 6 GB of VRAM, because Stable Diffusion mainly uses the VRAM of your GPU to produce its outputs. Now, how will we check if your GPU has at least 6 GB of VRAM? You can simply search the model of your GPU in the internet to know. But what if you don't know the model of your GPU? That's easy. Click on the search bar in the taskbar and type DXDiag and press enter. Go to the display tab on the top, then the GPU model and the VRAM will be displayed below. GPUs like RTX 4090, RTX 3090, and name a few are the top most discussed GPUs when it comes to speed of output for Stable Diffusion. But these GPUs cost thousands of dollars. But you don't have to worry, because there are budget GPUs like RX 6650, RTX 2060, and RTX 3060, which is the one I'm using right now. There are also reports on the internet of several setups that can run Stable Diffusion on GPUs below 6 GB VRAM. GPU like 1050 Ti, which only has 4 GB of VRAM. There are also methods on how to use Stable Diffusion without even needing a GPU, but that's another tutorial on its own, so maybe next time. So, now that we're done with the hardware requirements, now it's time for the software. Firstly, you need a Windows 10 or Windows 11 operating system to follow this tutorial. Automatic 1111 has support for Mac and Linux, but what I will show you right now is a tutorial for Windows users. If you have the operating system sorted out, it's time to go to the next step. Install Python 3.10.6. Go to the website, link is in the description. Make sure that the page says Python 3.10.6 on the top, because installing other version of Python will give you errors. Now scroll down to the near bottom of the page and look for Windows Installer 64-bit. Click on the word and it will download the setup file. Once downloaded, open the setup file. Now, this is important, put a check on Add Python 3.10 below before proceeding. Click Install now and it will only take a few seconds. Just close the installer after it has been installed successfully. Next step, we need to download Git. Go to the website, link is also in the description below. On the page, look for standalone installer. Click 64-bit Git for Windows setup. Once downloaded, open the setup file and hit next until you see the progress bar for installation. You don't have to change anything here. Just hit next until you see a progress bar installing Git. Now this will take a while because it will install a lot of files, but once finished you can go ahead and close the installer out and we can now proceed to the next step. For the next step, we will now install the main files of Stable Diffusion. Go to your taskbar, search and type cmd, then press enter. A black dialog box will appear. In the description, go ahead and copy and paste the following below step 3. Once copied, paste it to the command prompt, the black dialog box. It should look like this. Now press enter and it will now download the necessary files directly from the automatic 1111 repository for you to be able to run Stable Diffusion. This might take a while depending on the speed of your connection. You'll know it's done when you see the line C:user again. Once done, it will now be available on the same path, inside local disk C, inside user folder and inside your username folder. It will have the folder named Stable-Diffusion-WebUISD. If you want to put it in a different location, you can do so. Right-click on the folder and click Cut. Now this is important. Make sure that path and folder you're pasting it to doesn't contain any spaces on their names. If it do have spaces, you can simply rename it and replace the spaces with a dash or an underscore. Like this, for example. The folder that I'm pasting Stable Diffusion into doesn't contain any spaces on its name, but on the path, the folder before it contains a space. This won't do. Double check the whole path. If a folder does contain a space, replace them with a dash or underscore. Also, it's important that you don't paste it in places like program files and program files x64 because that folder by default has spaces on its name, and renaming that folder will probably cause some issues on the programs installed in your computer. Once you're done with the installation of Stable Diffusion, we're halfway there. Next, we'll need to download a model for the Stable Diffusion. Go to civitai.com. This is one of the trusted websites where you can download models, LoRa's, and etc. for Stable Diffusion. Click the filter icon on the top right of the page and under Model Types, click Checkpoint. Change monthly to all time to see the most popular models of all time. Just a suggestion, if you're going for a realistic look, like an ultra-realistic picture of a real man or woman, go ahead and download the Realistic Vision model. But if you're into anime art, try the model named Cetus Mix. Or you can just download the model Deliberate if you want an all-around art style. So to download and add models to your Stable Diffusion, just click the model you want to download, then choose which version of the model you want to download. Different versions has different art styles too, so be sure to read the description on the model page before downloading. You can also check the gallery for samples of outputs. Once you've got the model and the version you wanted, go ahead and click Download. This will take a while depending on your connection, but as I said earlier, most models tend to have bigger sizes because it contains the training files necessary for stable diffusion to make an image. Some model and version has this so-called VAE in them. When you encountered this kind of model, you have to download two things. One is the model itself and next is the VAE file associated with the model. You can usually find this in the file selection part of the page. This only occurs on rare occasion wherein a model was created without a VAE baked in it. The site Civit AI has many more models that you can download if you want to explore and experiment with different models. Just remember to make sure that you read the description of the model to better understand how it will work to your advantage. Next step is we need to put the model you downloaded to the model folder inside Stable Diffusion. Go to the folder where you installed Stable Diffusion and then go inside Models folder. Inside Models folder, go inside Stable Diffusion. This is where you need to paste the model that you have downloaded. The file usually ends with a .ckpt or safe tensors. Now go ahead and copy and paste the model to the Stable Diffusion folder. Remember the last time I said that some model has a VAE associated with it. We need to perform an extra step. After copy and pasting the .ckpt or safe tensor file inside the Stable Diffusion folder, go back one folder up and open VAE folder. Now this is the folder where you will need to paste the .vae file associated to the model. Like I told you earlier, this is quite uncommon nowadays because latest models that are created today are built in with a VAE inside the ckpt or safe tensor files. So you don't need to do this step if your model is not associated with a VAE file. We're almost done here, so stay with me. Go back and open the main Stable Diffusion folder, scroll down and look for a file called webuserai.bat. Right-click on it and choose Edit. A notepad will open up with a bunch of text for modifying how your Stable Diffusion will work. Now look for set command line _args equals. Now depending what your GPU is, we will put some commands next to it. First off, get to know what your GPU is, if it's an NVIDIA or AMD. If you don't know what's the brand or manufacturer of your GPU, go to the taskbar search and type dxdiag, then hit enter. Go to the display tab and below should be the information of what your GPU manufacturer is. Now for NVIDIA GPUs, type in no-half-vae space xformers. This is what it should look like on your notepad now. Now if your GPU is an AMD, you should type in --precision space full space no-half. Now if you ask me what these parameters are for, these is so that your Stable Diffusion will run faster and will lessen the unintentional black output images. Now if your GPU has less than 6 GB VRAM, you need to add few more command parameters. At the end of all other command parameters, add --medvram or --lowvram depending whether which one is working fine for you. Nevertheless, these command parameters are just used to better optimize your overall experience while using Stable Diffusion. Once the command parameters has been added, press Ctrl+S to save the notepad or simply go to File then Save. Close the notepad after saving. Now it's time to run the main program. Double-click on webuserai.bat and the command prompt will open up. This will download and load everything that is necessary to run Stable Diffusion. Just let it load anything until you see a message that says, running on local URL :127.0.0.1:7860. If you see this message, it means there are no errors and Stable Diffusion is running completely fine. If you don't see these lines after a while of no activity in the command prompt, then you might had some error causing it. Most common reason why you get an error is because your Python version is not 3.10.6. Now how do you know what your Python version is? Open up taskbar search and type cmd. On the command prompt type python space -- version and hit enter. Next message will show you the version of Python install on your computer. If you don't have Python installed on your computer, it will say something like Python is not recognized as an internal or external command. Make sure you installed Python 3.10.6. Another common mistake why you get an error during startup of Stable Diffusion Web UI is because the folder path where Stable Diffusion is installed have spaces in it. Go to where your Stable Diffusion folder is installed. Click the top bar where the folder path is located. Examine carefully if the path has any spaces on it. If it has one, go to that folder and replace the space with a dash or an underscore, or just simply remove the spaces. I'm going to remind you again, please do not put Stable Diffusion inside Program Files or Program Files x64 folder, because those folders have spaces and renaming those folder would be bad for your computer. You're getting this issue because of the Python programming structure causing it to error. Another common thing why you're getting an error is because you've placed the Stable Diffusion folder on a folder that is protected or secured. Place your Stable Diffusion folder on a folder accessible by Python. That way the program can execute. Going back, once you get the URL of the web UI, copy the URL and open up any browser that you like. Then paste it on the search bar and hit enter. It will load up the user interface opening the main program. Leave the CMD running on the background. This is the program that keeps the Stable Diffusion running even if you accidentally close the page. As long as the CMD is running on the background, everything that are currently processing on the Stable Diffusion will still continue. Welcome to the automatic 11.11 web UI. Now let me explain how to set this up before you generate your very first AI image. Go to the settings on the top of the page. Then on the left side, click Stable Diffusion. Remember when I said a while ago about model that needs VAE to work, this is where you need to set it. On the SD-VAE drop-down, the name of the VAE should be available. Just choose the VAE you want to use or just choose automatic. Now what if your VAE wasn't on the list? One reason could be that you accidentally put the VAE file to the wrong folder. Just remember that the VAE files should go inside VAE folder. Another reason is that it's possible that the file you downloaded is not a VAE file. Or the model you've downloaded doesn't need a VAE to run. Remember that this is only the models that needs a VAE to run. Next steps are for both VAE and non-VAE models. Change the clip skip to 2. This creates less changes to the final output, making it more detailed and concise. Next stop, go to User Interface on the left side of the page. Then scroll down and look for Quick Settings list. Add initial underscore noise underscore multiplier. And IMG to IMG underscore color underscore correction. This will optimize your IMG to IMG outputs when you use it in the future. Next is go to Sampler parameter on the left. Scroll down a bit and look for Eta Noise Seed Delta. Below it type the number 31337. This is a kind of a seed that the AI uses to help generate images. This is extremely helpful if you're using Stable Diffusion to generate images in the same seed. This can also be any number that you want, but 31337 is just the most common number people use because it resembles the settings of Novel AI, which is a good AI tool to generate anime images. We're done with the settings. Now click Apply Settings on the top of the page to save all the changes we made. After that, click Reload UI button next to it to apply the changes on the UI, or just simply press F5 or refresh. Also remember that some settings can only take place after restarting the whole Stable Diffusion program. This means closing the command prompt CMD running on the background and opening WebUI-user.bat again. Now with all the settings in order, we are now ready to experiment with the main program. Go back to Text to IMG tab. See the drop-down above that says Stable Diffusion Checkpoint? This is where you will choose the model that Stable Diffusion will use as a guide for outputs. Choose what model you want. For this tutorial I will use Cetus Mix and Realistic Vision to generate an anime girl and a realistic image of a girl. If your model doesn't show up on the drop-down list, just click the refresh button next to it. If it still didn't appear, go back to the main Stable Diffusion folder, go inside Models, then Stable-Diffusion folder. Make sure that the model you've downloaded is here in this folder. First, let's try Cetus Mix and we'll try to generate an anime girl or waifu. Let me tell you about prompting. There are two types of prompts: positive prompts and negative prompts. Positive prompts are a set of words you want the image to have. Most common prompts for anime generation are ultra-detailed, illustration, and one girl. On the other hand, the negative prompts are a set of words you don't want to see on the image. Most common negative prompts that you will see anywhere is easy negative, low res, bad anatomy, bad hands, and signature. You can add more prompts that you want, but prompting by itself needs a video of it due to its techniques and complexity. But there's an easier way to get the good prompts. Go back to civiteye.com and choose the model that you're using. Scroll down and check the gallery for any images that you like. Once you saw an image that you like, hover to the information icon at the bottom part of the image and it will show you useful information about how it was generated. Simply just copy and paste the prompts given in the information. It would also be a good habit to save both the positive and negative prompts you copied in a notepad for future reference. Next is the sampling method. The sampling methods listed in Automatic 1111 needs another video on itself because of how each of them would have different effects and results to the image by adding noises. But for now, just remember that Euler is the most simple sampler of them all. DPM and DPM++ samples are the newest and is better used with recently released models. In my opinion, I had the best results when I use Euler for simple images and DPM++ SDE Keras when I'm generating a more complex image. The best thing is no one is stopping you to experiment on what sampling method is the best. Go ahead and try different sampling method and see what you get. Next is the sampling step slider. Sampling steps works like telling Stable Diffusion how much details you want the image to have. Obviously, a higher number means higher details, but always remember, higher details doesn't always mean it's better. Most of the time I only use around 20 or 30. Depending on how much details I want the image to have. During my experiments, higher values more than 50 gives you unnecessary additions in the image. So my suggestion is play around 20 to 30. Also remember that making the value of the sampling step higher means more time to process the image. Now restore face is best used for realistic image, especially for close-up images. It's not necessary that you need this to be always on when generating realistic images because proper prompting and sampling method would sometimes create good faces. This is just a case-to-case basis when you want to have a more detailed face or want to fix the face of the subject. Tiling is used to generate tiled style images. This is extremely useful if you're trying to generate pattern images for good seamlessness. Next is everyone's favorite. High-res fix. High-res fix is used to upscale the images Stable Diffusion will generate. As you turn it on, additional options will appear. There will now be a drop-down list for Upscaler. This drop-down is kinda similar to the sampling method. Here you will choose which upscaler you want to be used on the output. Now the upscalers have different advantages, but that just have to wait for another video due to the subject matter. For now, remember that latent is like an all-around upscaler and ESRGAN is good for upscaling realistic images. Since we're trying to generate an anime girl, we're going to use a different upscaler not mentioned on the list. It's called 4x-anime sharp. Now this upscaler is not on Automatic 1111 by default. So what we're going to do now is go to the website where we can download the upscaler that we're going to use for our generated anime image. The link is given in the description. This site consists of different upscalers that you can use for different art styles. As you can see, this page consists of hundreds of upscaler files, so to make our search easier, press Ctrl+F to bring out the fine text bar and then type 4x-anime. Click the file and it will redirect you to the Mega and C download page. Just download the file 4x-anime sharp.pth. Go back to the Upscaler page and now search for 4x Ultra Sharp and download its PTH file too. Once downloaded, right-click on the files and choose Cut. Open up the main Stable Diffusion folder, then go inside Models folder. Then open up ESRGAN folder. Put the downloaded files here by pasting. Now we need to refresh Upscalers loaded on the UI. Go back to the CMD running on the background and close it. Then go back to the Stable Diffusion folder and run the web UI user.bat again. After that, it gave the message that it is running on URL 127.0.0.1:7860. Refresh the Stable Diffusion page. Go back to the Stable Diffusion page and hit refresh. The 4x-Anime Sharp and 4x-Ultra Sharp should now be in the list. Now I know, and that's my bad. All prompts are gone again. But like I told you, saving prompts in a notepad would be a very good habit. Just copy and paste the prompts you got before, then set the sampling method and sampling steps, then turn on high-res fix. Now change the Upscaler to 4x-Anime Sharp, the one that we've just downloaded. Next slider is the high-res steps. High-res steps is just like sampling steps that I explained earlier. The higher the number, the higher the quality of the image. But again, it's not necessarily higher quality means better. I usually just play around 3 to 7 when it comes to high-res steps. For now, put it to 3. Denoising strength slider is all about changing part of the generated images. The higher its value, the higher chance that it will generate something that is further away from the initial image generation. Good upscaling in my experiments is around 0.40 to 0.55. For now, we'll set it to 0.45. Because we don't want the high-resolution image to change much from the initial image. Lastly, for the high-res fix option is the upscale by slider. Upscale by means multiplying the resolution. So if we're generating a 500 by 500 image and have upscale by set to 2, the final image's resolution will be 1000 by 1000. So yeah, times 2. The final image's resolution is also displayed right above high-res step, so you can also use that as a reference. The other sliders, resize width to and resize height to, is used if you want to resize the output image to a specific resolution. To use it, just slide the slider or enter the value you want. The output's resolution will also be calculated and displayed while changing the values for reference. Remember that having high-res fix enabled means more time to process the image. Next is width and height. It's what the initial image resolution you would want the Stable Diffusion to generate. 512 by 512 is the default resolution, but you can also adjust the slider or change the values manually to your desired resolution. This width and height is like the size of the canvas you want the Stable Diffusion to draw with. Higher values wouldn't actually mean higher quality, but it would mean Stable Diffusion would see more space to draw and fill up. Meaning more objects to generate or more person, even though you've specifically said to only generate one person. This also means the image will be more prone in generating bad anatomy, weird unnecessary objects and extra limbs. And I'm sure you don't want that. During my experiments, I found out that the default 512 by 512 is the best resolution to start with for a square image. 576 by 1024 for portrait and 1024 by 576 for landscape. For now, let's use 512 by 512. Batch count is just telling the Stable Diffusion how many images you would like to generate, while batch size is telling Stable Diffusion how many images you would want it to generate simultaneously. Next is CFG scale. CFG scale is a slider that determines how much the positive and negative prompts will affect the output. It's like the same concept of denoising strength slider, but only intended for the positive and negative prompts. Here's what I found out about CFG values. 1 to 6 means it would steer far from the prompts you typed in and would cause Stable Diffusion to generate a more creative and free-form output. A value of 7 to 9 would mean Stable Diffusion will generate what Stable Diffusion will normally generate with the given prompts. This is actually the baseline for CFG scale, and 7 is the default value. A value of 10 to 15 means that Stable Diffusion will steer directly into the prompts you have provided. I haven't really understood values above 15. So for this tutorial, let's just set the CFG scale to its default value of 7. Lastly, before we hit the big generate button, is the seed. A seed is used to generate a random number that will associate to the output image. By default it is set to -1 to make Stable Diffusion generate random images. A seed is extremely useful if you want to generate the same image again, but with little to no changes. The button next to it that looks like a dice is what changes the current seed value to random, which is -1. The next button is the reuse button. This will automatically pull up the seed you used for the last image you generated. Extra is for seed variation, which is used to change the seed while in the middle of generating an image. So let's leave the seed value to -1 and turn off extra for now. The time we all been waiting for. Click that generate button. Depending on how much VRAM your GPU has, this will take time to generate one image. If you followed everything that I mentioned, including the settings, prompts and parameters, an image of an anime girl should come up on the preview. Now that we have generated an anime girl, let's now try to generate a realistic image of a girl. Change the model or checkpoint to realistic vision. Change the positive prompt and the negative prompt to anything you want. I still suggest that you go back to the civiteye.com, then select the model you're using and then browsing the gallery and copying the prompt information given there. From the given prompts by other users, you would be able to modify it to your liking and actually learn more about prompting in a better way. So that's what I did. I copied both the positive prompts and the negative prompts and pasted it in Stable Diffusion. You can click the generate button now if you want. Or you can change the other parameters to your liking. And that's all there is to it. You've just generated your first Stable Diffusion anime girl and realistic girl photo. Obviously this tutorial only covers the setup and text-to-image portion of Automatic 1111. Next time we'll discuss about image-to-image and other things that I missed to explain on this tutorial, including the proper use of prompting and sampling methods. Just remember that AI generation is all about experimenting and exploring. Don't be afraid to try out new prompts, different parameters and models. The tool is totally free and nothing will force you to pay a monthly fee when generating an image. I will be posting more AI-related tutorials in the future, so make sure to subscribe. Have a fun generating day, everyone.